Welcome to the Point Cybersecurity Podcast. Each week, join Vince Spina and Rachael Lyon to explore the latest in global cybersecurity news, trending topics, and cyber industry initiatives impacting businesses, governments, and our way of life. Now, let's get to the point. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of To The Point Podcast. I'm Rachael Lyon, here with my co-host, Vince Spina. Vince, are you coming back from some fabulous travels again this week?
I'm not. Since the last podcast, I'm home from Malaysia, and took about 4 days to get the internal body clock reset. And happy to report this first morning that I didn't get up at 3:30 a.m. because my body thought it was time to get up. So back to a normal schedule.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's hard. I never sleep when I go to Asia, but I get a lot of work done, because I'm up, which is nice. So, all right. So let me introduce today's guest. Really excited to welcome Kelly McCracken. She is Senior Vice President, Detection and Response at Salesforce. She's got 20 years in cybersecurity and technology and is deep in incident response for much of that time. Among her many achievements, she's helped develop and lead implementation of national-level cyber initiatives for federal government, including development of National Cyber Incident Response Plan and National Cyber Risk Alert Level. And we'll talk about some of her other achievements later in the podcast. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, Vince is going to kick us off today.
Yeah, Kelly, super excited. This is kind of an area that we have passion for here at our brand. But as Rachael said, you have just an immense background in a lot of things, setting up SOCs, incident response, et cetera. So I thought I'd just kind of maybe ask a question on security operations centers and where they've evolved. I work for a vendor today. But in a previous life, I worked in the customer side of the business and participated in NOCs and SOCs. But boy, the environment has just really moved on. There's the rise of advanced, persistent threats, sophisticated attacks, things like that. So my sense is, setting up your operations centers has had to morph over a period of time. What can you tell you from in the early days when you started to where you're at now? What are some of the big changes that you guys have had to do?
Yeah, so I think if you look back over at least my 20 years of being in the industry, we've really have evolved for the better. I remember starting off, there was this sense that you couldn't share. You couldn't share if you had an incident. You couldn't share your challenges that you had with trying to detect and respond. It was like if you had an incident that was really bad. Now I would say everyone's expecting people to have incidents, and it's more about how do you respond to that incident? How are you sharing about the incident? What are you sharing that you've learned from that incident so that the whole entire community can continue to learn from each other? So I remember being back as a government contractor in early 2000s when FISMA first came out, and that's the Federal Information Security Management Act. And each department agency had to report every quarter their incidents. And you'd have some departments and agencies saying they had one incident, and you'd have some departments and agencies saying they had hundreds of incidents because people were all reporting different things. There was no standardization as to what an incident really was, and people were scared, especially, departments and agencies were afraid if they reported they had an incident, maybe they wouldn't get the right grade for FISMA on their report card. Whereas now, I think if you looked at people with incidents, every big company out there, I think, has had some type of incident that's probably hit the news in one way or another. And I think if you looked over even just the past few years, how some companies have been scrutinized for not reporting their incidents or sharing about their incidents, and it has caused a lot of us to move to be more transparent.
Yeah.
So from a security operations center perspective, when we set those up, it takes a lot of how do you look at how we're connected. So over the past few years, maybe last 10 years, companies have becoming more interconnected with each other. And so you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so you have to really look at your vendors, because, we saw with SolarWinds a few years ago, they had an incident and then it impacted many other companies. Right. And so you have to make sure that you're aware in the security operations centers, where do you have those connections, and then build those relationships. So I know at Salesforce, with a lot of our customers, I'm always trying to meet their security operations teams, their threat intelligence teams. So I can go ahead and build those relationships now, because a lot of our customers are our vendors as well. And so we're all in this together. And by establishing those relationships early, before one of us has an issue, we can be better prepared to be able to detect and respond together. And there's a lot of information we can share because we're all dealing with the same similar threat actors. And I think, it takes a village for us to respond effectively to today's threats.
Yeah, it truly does. And I think that's such a great point on transparency. It's like the only way we're going to try to get ahead of things is if we have all the information we need, right, to address this. I'm curious too, though, and we can't escape the AI conversation, Kelly, and so I'd be really fascinated in kind of your perspective on how AI is reshaping the way SOCs operate, because I imagine it's a pretty exciting opportunity here.
Yeah. So I think everyone over the past few years has been focused on automation. And then within the last 18 months, a lot of people have started saying, how can we leverage AI in your operations centers? And many security vendors have built automation and AI into their products for many years before it was even called AI. I think a lot of security operations centers are looking at how can you automate away a lot of the tier 1 type work. But as you do that, you need to make sure that you're upskilling those individuals that were at tier 1, right, because now they're going to have to be handling more advanced things. So it's not necessarily hiring people to do the same job as they've always done, because you got AI and automation helping them with that. But now, how do you take those people that you had doing those jobs and upskill them? How do you help them grow in their careers? Because as I always say, I'm not trying to automate because I want to get rid of people. I didn't want to automate because I want to reduce our time to detect and I want to reduce our time to respond. And that means I need more people being able to handle those more complex alerts and to be able to change and do more hunting in the environments and doing more in-depth analysis across the board and being able to see, learning more about the threats that we're seeing externally and understanding those so that when we see them in our affecting our environment, we are prepared for there. But if you don't focus on upskilling those tier 1 analysts, you're losing out. You're not taking advantage of the fact that you have invested in all this automation and AI fully.
Yeah, Kelly, just a follow-up question around AI, and you said, hey, the way you really want to use it is not to kind of retract the size of your team, but actually to use it for enhanced detection and response. Any key use cases, like you said, you guys started looking at it about last 18 months. Any key use cases that, AI has significantly helped you guys kind of detect and then ultimately respond against?
Yeah, I mean, we use a lot of AI from both generative AI to help, develop communications, be able to analyze emails that come in from our employees, to our security alias. We leverage that to then take that away because we get, we're very much of a see something, say something type culture. Yeah. And so we do get a lot of reports. Some of it's nothing, but, people are very anxious and we can leverage AI to help vet, what are those things that need to have another set of eyes on it. And what are those that we can just, this is okay. Especially phishing. Phishing is a great way to leverage AI and automation. There's a lot of security vendors out there that can help you block the phishing emails from getting into your end users, but they're not 100% perfect. Nothing is 100% perfect. So you're always going to have those phishing emails, especially because AI can be used for good, but it can also be used for bad. And those phishing emails are getting more and more well crafted by the threat actors. They no longer have the misspellings. They can be in any different language. They can have your logo, and they have a lot of information about your company because it's very quick to do that now. So those phishing emails that get through get reported to your SOC, and by leveraging AI and automation, you can more quickly turn around and automate that whole process end to end on responding to that phishing, making sure you're doing the right blocks, removing the emails, communicating out if needed. So that's, I would say, is probably one of the number one use cases I see a lot of the security operations centers using today.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, phishing is just crazy when you keep hearing about the sophistication too that AI has enabled, right, with these approaches, and being able to replicate kind of languages in the Middle East and have them look credible. It's just mind blowing. Yeah.
I want a bumper sticker that says "My AI can beat up your AI," because I think I kind of feel like that's where we're at. So.
That's right. You need AI to detect AI. That's right.
That's right.
Okay, so one final question as we talk about SOCs. How does a SOC integrate threat intelligence into its operations?
So that's a great question. I like to say that you need to leverage your threat intelligence to help drive your whole security program. So you need to identify leveraging your external threat intelligence, the threat intelligence you get from your own environment, the threat intelligence that the intelligence you can pull from your incidents that you've had, from risk assessments that you've done, any type of testing you've done. Pull all that together and really assess what are your top threats to your organization. Mm-hmm. You can try to boil the ocean as a security operations center. It's not going to be effective. So you have to really prioritize what logs you're onboarding, because you can't onboard every single log. It's way too expensive. And a lot of logs you'll never need. You need to prioritize your detections, and you need to prioritize which playbooks you have. So if you take that information that you've collected and identify your top threats, you then can prioritize as to number one, do I have the protections in place to be able to protect against that threat? Because you often need to have those protections in place to be able to have the needed logs to detect against that top threat. So identifying where you have your gaps in your protections, and then identifying where do you have your gaps in the logging that you currently have. Do you need to onboard new logs to your SIEM? And then once you have those logs, what detections can you do on those logs? And then prioritize those. And then from that, all right, you now are detecting, but how do you respond? Do you have the playbooks in place to respond? And then does the team know how to respond? Do they know, like I said, it takes a village to respond, even internally. Do you know the right teams you have to reach out to help you be able to respond end to end for that incident? So leveraging threat intelligence, I think, like if you try to do security operations without leveraging threat intelligence, you're probably overwhelmed. And you're probably not focusing on the right things. And the threat intelligence does definitely allow you to do that. In addition to like threat intelligence having the ability to help you during an incident with the attribution and how a threat actor is working, their typical TTPs can definitely help an incident response team drive their response to an incident.
Yeah, Kelly, we'll kind of start moving down that value chain, because you were talking about it, so as you kind of get strong at threat intelligence, then you have to move to incident response. And you talked about just a minute ago about, building out strong playbooks, and you intimated a few things, but, in your opinion, what are some of the key elements to creating a successful incident response playbook? Like, what are the things that you and your teams are looking for?
Yeah. So first, you need to, hopefully you have an incident response plan that's you follow no matter what the type of incident is. And then the specifics of like the investigation piece is where the playbook comes into play. A few years ago, wrote a blog on how to write an incident response plan. And a lot of it is, first making sure you identify what are those types of incidents that you could have. Because that will detail what playbook you need for each incident. You also need to determine, what is the potential impact that type of incident can have, and that can drive your playbook as well. If you have your low severity incidents, phishing incidents that aren't successful in compromising a system are probably a low severity incident from you. But ransomware type of incident has a totally different playbook. I would say ransomware, we could go on probably for an hour just about how to respond to ransomware attacks, but ransomware incidents have a very unique playbook compared to any other security incident I think any security operations center would respond to. So you need to identify, what are those types of incidents that need playbooks, and then what type of severity would those incidents have? Data exposure would be a higher severity incident. Developing who are the stakeholders you bring in to respond to that type of incident? What are the different containment actions you need to take for that specific type of incident? Because they're all going to be different. And then, what is your eradication strategy if it's a threat actor? Are you okay keeping sorry, I said eradication, but it's also containment. What is your containment and eradication strategy if you have a threat actor in your environment? Are you going to go ahead and contain, or are you going to wait and see until you've fully scoped the incident? You have to have those discussions beforehand, because if you're trying to do it during an incident, everyone's at high stress levels. It makes it very difficult. Business leaders they need to be trained as well, because they're going to be the ultimate ones that say yes or no. Do you pull the pull plug or push the big red button? They need to be trained on having some of those discussions now before the actual incident. So going through the whole incident response lifecycle inside that playbook and having those discussions and detailing it out, those decisions that are made prior to the incident, helps the incident move more smoother during the actual incident.
It's interesting. I'd be curious of your perspective here too, because I think a lot of people, and you mentioned this in the blog that you were talking about, kind of treat these incident response plans as kind of like a tick box, like, we got to get one, set it and forget it, we're good. It's a matter of if something happens, and that's just not reality, right? I mean, it's when something's going to happen. So I'd be kind of curious, like what mistakes or, kind of oversights organizations are making when designing their incident response plans, and are they following through on addressing those?
I think you hit it right on the nail. Like, if you write an incident response plan just so that you're doing the compliance checkbox, you're wasting your time. You can download one off the internet and change the brand and have that. But if you write your incident response plan that is unique to your organization, number one, it helps bring everyone together. And we try to, at Salesforce, run incidents very similar across, whether it's a security incident or availability incident, because the stakeholders are all the same. Like you're bringing in your legal teams, your public relations teams, your business leaders, your engineers. And if they have to be like, I have to do this for this security incident, and I have to do this for an availability incident, or this for any other type of incident, it's very confusing. But if you standardize it across the company, and then you can get a little bit more detailed as you go down into the different levels of teams, it helps align so people aren't scrambling and understanding or trying to figure out what they're supposed to do during an incident. I always say when we do our retrospectives for incidents that there is no incident that is handled 100% perfectly. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say, you know what, at any company that we did that, there was no mistakes. That was like super clean. There's always going to be something. And it's often because the threat landscape is changing. We're handling different incidents. You never know what's going to get thrown at you. And so there are going to be mistakes, but it's how do you learn from those mistakes? And it goes back to how I said at the beginning. It's not that you're not, it's not companies saying that they have no incidents. It's when they have those incidents, how do they respond is, I think, how you build trust across the industry. And by coming out and saying, like, number one, we had an incident, this is what we did, and here's what we learned from it. I think is definitely important because those learnings is how we all get better. The problem is if you don't take those learnings and apply them, then I would say that that's a big mistake companies make.
Yeah, Kelly, I'm curious. You guys are a SaaS-based company, and a lot of customers now are adopting a cloud first or a cloud also type adoption strategy. In the old days, when I was a customer, all of our apps and our data sat in our personal data centers. And, that was a little bit easier to kind of manage and contain because, it was a bordered environment. The world of cloud today, it's borderless. Data is everywhere, can be accessed from anyone, anywhere. How's that kind of changed, how you guys look at incident response planning today?
Yeah, so I think we've seen the world move exponentially to cloud. And often that is decisions that are being made by the CIO office, the IT team, and sometimes they are including their security team, and other times they're not including their security team. And often security teams don't understand sometimes the risks of going to a SaaS vendor or what's available from that SaaS vendor from a security perspective. Mm-hmm. So I think as companies do move to the cloud, they need to make sure that they're including their security team through the whole process. And it's not just a once and done. And I think that's where a lot of people run into problems, is that they're not doing the continuous monitoring of their SaaS applications or even their infrastructure as a service. They need to make sure that they're doing that continuous monitoring, because you can misconfigure. You can have if you don't have MFA enabled for those services, you can have account compromises very easily. And that's on the customer side of the shared model that's with every SaaS solution out there. So security teams need to make sure, if they understand which cloud solutions are out there that their company is using, and then what is available to them. Is there a solution where they can ingest the logs from those vendors so that they can get the visibility into what's going on? Do you have a solution where you can monitor the configurations of those of those vendors so that you can see if someone has accidentally toggled something that then allowed for more access than intended? You really need to have that oversight and not just send it to the cloud and assume it's all good, because it is a shared model. From an incident response perspective, it can be a lot more costly to respond to an incident that's in the cloud than on-prem. Because if you think about it, you are if you're not ingesting those logs directly into your SIEM, you now have to go request those logs. So now you're spending time to be able to fully scope the incident. You also may have to pay for those logs, and those logs can be very expensive. You're also at the mercy of that vendor being able to pull those logs in a timely manner. Depending on how they have those logs stored, it could take them a while. So it's always good to understand what is available and then also exercise it. Do your tabletops, include your vendors in those tabletops, because that's the way that being over-prepared will help save you in the end. And you're not going to be scrambling as to, does anybody know anybody at this vendor that can help us get our help desk ticket moved up in line? Because we really need our logs to respond to an incident. And then you're scouring LinkedIn. Understand who those contacts are and who you contact at the vendors to get that immediate help, because you don't have time during a security incident.
It's a really great point. And I think it's interesting too about, the on-premises, right? A lot of folks are operating within hybrid environments, and, because COVID kind of forced them to, right? But I'm just interested, are there unique considerations, right, to incidents in the cloud versus on-premises? Are these kind of separate playbooks, or how should people be thinking about these things?
They're I would say it's all depending on the company. They're most likely probably all integrated now, mm-hmm. And that makes it so you can't have separate playbooks. But you need to understand what tools you have, especially with infrastructure as a service. What security tools can you have available to help you detect and respond? And then you need to also look at, what are the different, how are they connected? If they are, if you have first party and cloud, how are they interconnected? And do your incident responders know how to respond in the cloud? Like the different, responding in AWS is different than GCP, which is different than Azure, which is then different than a SaaS vendor. Like, do your incident response teams know how to respond in those environments? Are you training them on those solutions? So it's definitely it's a journey that a company has to take when they start moving to the cloud, because it's definitely different tools that are available and different skills that are needed.
Yeah, Kelly, I was going to ask her earlier when we were talking about SOCs and threat detection and things like that, and what was the role that AI played, on that side of the equation. The other side of that equation is, can you share how you guys are using AI and the value of that from the incident response side of the equation?
So we are on our AI journey. At Salesforce, we've leveraged AI for years, but as we get in, with all the different AI innovation that's coming out, I feel like daily, we're continuing to build that into our operations. So we use what we call a detection response co-pilot that helps guide our incident responders based on previous incidents that we've handled. They can get questions. They can ask, they can get summaries of incidents. They can understand. They can pull threat intelligence in. So that's one use case that we're using. We're continuing to build it out, though. One of the things that you have to think about, though, as you are implementing AI into your security operations, you're going back and you're assuming that you have handled every single alert and every single case and incident 100% perfectly, because that is what is going to be training your AI models on. So even though you're leveraging AI, you still have to have that skilled analyst on the other end saying, yeah, that actually doesn't make sense. And being able to have that opportunity to flag it so we can fix it. Because the AI is only going to be as good as the data. And unless you have everything absolutely 100% perfect in the data that it's taking, just like any use for AI, you could go down the wrong path. So it goes back to saying that you need to skill up those tier 1 analysts, including tier 2 and tier 3, so that they know to question the AI that you've implemented. We're also looking at leveraging AI for detection. We always, if you're in the middle of an incident, you may need to create new detections. Well, I don't want to have a 24/7 detection team that has to be on call to be able to create a detection for me. If I could have a incident responder that can be able to leverage AI to create that detection for us, that relieves me of having to pull someone in on a weekend that may not need to be pulled in, where we can use AI. So there's a lot of different use cases out there. We're continuing to explore like everybody else, but it's it's fun. It's interesting and a fun world to live in, to see like how we can use this new technology that everyone is grasping onto.
Yeah, I actually just wanted maybe a follow-up, Rachel, and I'll turn it over to you. But you talked about the interaction of an analyst working with AI, but not fully trusting AI. But I was wondering, is there any kind of rote incidents out there that you fully trust AI just to respond to that doesn't need human interaction? Or have we gotten to that point, or it's still kind of trust and verify kind of environment?
So I think it depends on what the impact of that incident could have. So if the containment action that the AI would take for that incident could be business impacting, no, I probably don't trust it to do it.
Okay.
If it's low impact and it's something that we can easily turn back, then yeah, that would be something that I would consider AI to be able to fully handle. Ultimately, though, I think that you need to have someone looking over all of it. Maybe not every minute, but at the end of the day, let's see what all the AI handled. Let me just double check to make sure that makes sense and that we're not missing something, or that the AI has mishandled it, or we've caused a business impact that we didn't intend to. So you still need that oversight, even though you have the AI handling it. But it really comes down to what is that level of risk you're willing to take on the impact that the AI could have in its response to your business.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, I imagine, because there would be that, I think, desire, right? You just want to hand it off and go take care of it, so you free up my time to go focus on these other things, but that's dangerous.
It is.
We're shifting gears a little bit. I'd like to talk a little bit about cyber protocols. When you're developing cyber protocols for an organization, I mean, where do you even start? and how do you ensure that what you're putting together is both, comprehensive enough to mitigate risk, particularly looking forward, but also, flexible enough to adapt to evolving threats, particularly when you don't know what's coming in the age of AI. It seems like a heady task.
Yes. So number one, when you're thinking about protocols and you're trying to build your overall strategy for your company, I think you have to look at your culture. And you have to, I think if you look at some of the most successful companies out there, most of them have security and trust at the forefront. Salesforce, we have trust as our number one value, and that really drives our culture and how we put security as at the forefront to make sure that we are building it into everything we do. That you also need to then start figuring out how do you build it into the innovation? Making sure that security is an enabler and not a blocker. And I think it's so important that as a security organization, you're not pushing things on the business and forcing it on them. You're more coming in as a collaborator. You're trying to enable them to be able to do their job in the business, but do it securely. So working with them to understand what their needs are and how can you address those needs while making sure that it's done in a secure manner. Often people want to do the right thing, but you need to understand their business needs to make sure that it is done in the right way. I think it's also implementing a continuous, improvement process, I would say. You can't set it and forget it. It's constantly looking and leveraging that threat intelligence, like I mentioned. Doing that threat intelligence assessment and from external and internal and pulling all that information together, that's a continuous process that you have to do to be able to make sure you know where you need to focus your efforts. And it really helps you prioritize. And you need to make sure that you're working throughout the community, like leveraging bug bounty programs and doing industry-wide collaboration, working through the ISACs and there's different, first, working in the industry to help share and get that information back so you can then apply it to your organization. I always push my team saying that we need to be out there in the industry trying to help the industry be better, help them. I want people to be able to learn from what we're learning at Salesforce, because I believe if we're sharing, then we're making the entire community stronger. So you have to have raising that bar type of attitude, and then again, it just comes down to that continuous monitoring of the threat landscape, because without that, you're going to be left behind and you're not be protecting against your top threats.
Yeah, Kelly, I love that, you use the term, you guys are always trying to be an enabler for the business, and trust is one of your core values. Your main mission is to keep your brand safe, right? And but you always have to kind of balance that with the experience of your employees and your customers and letting the business flow. When you talk about some of these, cyber hygiene type protocols, any you can share that through your experience have worked well, but some that, might not have worked so well and you had to course correct to kind of keep that, that balance happening of safety versus experience?
Yeah, I don't know that I have any specific protocol that I could share, but the ones that are the best are the ones that are reducing risk while they're also enabling the business. If you, as a security team, push out a protocol that does not enable the business, you're going to spend more of your time having those conversations, fighting it, and probably having to roll back things. You're going to waste your resources. So if you go into rolling out a protocol and having that partnership at the very beginning to understand the different environments, because I guarantee you, organizations don't have, their environments are not the same across the board. They probably have different variations of their environments, and each of them have various security controls and those. You need to look at those and say, okay, well, maybe this environment does not need this protocol at the most restrictive level, but this one does, because they don't have as much defense in depth, as much security controls in play. So if you try to beat peanut butter security protocols across the board, it's often not going to work. But if you sit there and you be a good business partner with the business leadership, you can usually move further, faster together. I think that you can also have these times where the business, if you're not working closely together, they can go off and they think they're doing the right thing, but they're not the security experts, and that can cause some problems as well. So it really comes down to just partnership, making sure that you understand the business and the business understands what you're trying to accomplish, and then working together to get there. When it comes to a security operations center, you'll hear sometimes like people don't see what the security operations center is handling. You probably do reports out to your leadership and to various stakeholders, but not everyone that works with a security operations center is seeing everything that's being sent. So if you push something on to a business and they're like, you know what, we had to do all that work to get that security protocol enabled, but what is it doing for me? Because no news is good news, in my opinion. But they don't see like the benefit of having it there if it's impacting them. But from a security perspective, it is. So that's where you have to, then start information sharing with them and explaining to them, because I had this enabled, I was able to detect and respond to these threats that were within your environment. And then that helps bring them along. But if you don't do that information sharing with them and help them understand that it is doing something positive for you, they will often push back on you.
It's funny too, right? I mean, there's been these surveys or articles on, you get more funding for cybersecurity after an incident versus, trying to prepare. And, it's hard to get executive leadership buy-in, right, to funding for these kind of things. And a lot of it is just, how do you translate, kind of the security speak into business terms that they understand, dollars and cents. I mean, I'd be interested in some strategies you use to kind of make that translation happen to get a C-suite on board.
Yeah, so you're right. You usually do get more funding after you have the incident, and it would be nice if you had it before. But it goes back to making sure that you are learning from other people's incidents. So when you see an incident hit the news, and like I said, more companies are being more transparent with like what happened, how they responded, the challenges they had, taking that information and bringing it back into your organization and saying, could this have happened here? And if it did, how would we have been able to detect it? Would we have been able to respond from it? Would we be able to have stopped it from happening in the first place? Leveraging that and then taking it to your executive leadership, because they all saw it in the news and they're like, right, that was scary for that company. And then saying it was, and the exact same thing could happen here if we don't take these actions now, because the threat actor is still out there. I think that's a better way. That's one way you can get it helpful. I recently saw a training, and on that training they explained how to get something through Congress, and it's you got to relate to the Congress person. Like find something that that's personal to them. Mm-hmm. And so, if you take that kind of approach, you can definitely most likely sell it to them. So finding a way to make it personal to the executive leadership team helps getting that funding that you need.
Yeah, actually, Kelly, let's talk a little bit about training. So up till now, we've intimated that any incidents were happening from bad actors, but it's certainly our experience here at our company, and maybe you feel the same. But a lot of times, good people just do dumb things, right? Or make mistakes. How do you kind of build that in, kind of training and awareness out to your employee community or maybe your customer community as some of these incidents come in and you uncover some things where good people just did something they probably shouldn't have done?
Yeah, so we get that data together and then figure out a way to do a campaign to help educate the employee base through we have our training and awareness team, and that helps bring the awareness. And if we're seeing something that's like immediate, getting it out to the company as quickly as possible so that they understand. People are going to make mistakes. Humans are probably the weakest link, unfortunately. And so you have to just understand that that's going to happen, but you have to build a culture where they feel okay saying, I made a mistake and this is what happened, not trying to cover it up. And that they feel okay reporting it, because if they don't, they're trying to cover it up could make things worse. So having that culture that it's okay to report, you're not going to get in trouble for making that mistake. It's better that you tell us versus not tell us. I think as a parent, I use the same approach with my children. Like if you're, it's better for you to just tell me what happened versus me trying to sit here and investigate. I think you build this culture where it is okay. If we start seeing a trend, and it may be people are just trying to do too much too fast. A few years ago, we had a chief trust officer that he would just start going out at every company leadership meeting or company all hands to say, please slow down. Take a breath before you send that email. Take a breath before you push that code. Take a breath. Just stop for a minute, because those going too fast, you can make those mistakes. And if you just slow down, you can prevent a lot of work from having to be done from a security operations perspective.
Yes, I had something like that happen yesterday when I was trying to multitask, and I clicked on
Care to share, Rachel? Or
something I should have. But luckily, I was able to rescind it and bring it back and correct it. So
we've all been there.
Was that my Vince, please don't read email? Was that
recall? Yeah. Oh yeah, good times. So I'm really curious. I mean, you've co-authored a NIST publication. I love these numbers too. SP 800-61 Computer Security Incident Handling Guide. That's so cool, And I can imagine doing these are a huge list. They're not. I'm just going to write this little thing. And, so I'd be curious to kind of researching standards. And when you start putting a guide together, does that really kind of start reframing how you think about certain things or security approaches? Or, kind of is there causality impact in going through such an exercise?
Yeah, I mean, putting one of those together, you have to do a ton of research. You have to talk to a lot of industry experts, listen to a lot of podcasts. But I think going through that experience was kind of foundational for the rest of my career. It really helped me learn how to do the full process and the importance of planning and thinking through things prior to an incident was important. And I got to work with some really talented people while developing that guide. But it was fun, but it was daunting. There's a lot of editing you go through, and making sure that you're not forgetting something and that you're getting it perfectly right. But it is a great way to really get deep into a specific area of security. So I definitely recommend, if anybody has the opportunity to help co-author a NIST publication, it's a great way to learn and to meet some great people across the industry as you develop it.
Awesome. Kelly, I got one more question, interest of time here, because we want to respect that. But earlier we talked about kind of some of the considerations of, data and applications moving off premise out in the cloud. My last question was, any different considerations when you're building out your security protocols as it pertains to employees? Like, it used to be we all came into the office 5 days a week, and now, a lot of those are working remote or hybrid. Yeah, how's that changed in your, from a security protocol consideration perspective?
I can't say that it changed significantly. Being a global company and people were already working remotely in some capacity prior to COVID, it didn't really change how we work. I think that it just made sure that moving to things like zero trust is important, and teaching people how to work from home, keeping things secure, making sure that you don't have ears around you if you're talking about sensitive information, not working at the coffee shop if you're on a call. Things. It's just general kind of hygiene. I think that whether you're in security or not, that people needed to learn to follow. But there wasn't much that changed for us when it came to going to remote from a security perspective. The same protocols applied across the board as they did prior to COVID.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, just use common sense sometimes a little bit too.
Yes. Our security awareness training just got a little bit longer to explain how to work from home.
Well, Kelly, I do want to be mindful of time. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a wonderful conversation and so many insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great time.
Wonderful.
Super articulate. I was impressed because just off the top of your head, we're throwing questions at you. And, know your environment. So.
Know your stuff. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's so important too. So I love that we're covering. I don't think we've had a podcast on this theme before, right? And it's just so critical. So thanks for kind of walking through all the various elements too, right? That people need to be thinking of because it is daunting. But when you go through the effort and exercise, it's so worth it. So worth it.
Yes. It's an important topic, and I think if the more you prepare, the better it will go for you.
Absolutely. So again, thank you, Kelly, and to all of our listeners. Thanks for joining us again this week. And Vince, as always, what do we want them to do?
Smash that like button.
That's right. Smash it. Smash the like button, subscription button, and comments. We love feedback. Please give us feedback on this episode and what you enjoyed or topics you'd like to hear in the future. We want to hear from you. So until next time, everybody, stay safe. Thanks for joining us on the To The Point Cybersecurity Podcast, brought to you by Forcepoint. For more information and show notes from today's episode, please visit www.forcepoint.com/podcast. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts.